What up? This is the Too Tall Sports Podcast. Thank you for joining me today. My guest on the show is Peter Fertig. He is the president and founder of the Bob Feller Act of Valor Award Foundation, and it honors ex-military, and a lot of his honorees are Hall of Famers from the Baseball Hall of Fame. So guys like Tommy Lasorda, obviously Bob Feller, Yogi Berra, Joe DiMaggio, George Brett, also tons of these guys that were involved, that want to get involved with the foundation. And it's all about supporting the troops, and also the amazing stories of guys like Ted Williams, who served in the Army twice or in the Navy twice and still was able to come back and play at a Hall of Fame level. It's pretty insane. So huge episode today with Peter Fertig, and you can find their stuff at actofvaloraward.org. That's where you can donate. You can check it out if you have a friend or family member or know anybody that wants to get involved with the foundation. It's all volunteers. It's a great cause, honoring ex-military and ex-armed forces people. So it's a great cause for everybody. And you can always find the show at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter at Too Tall Sports. You can email the show, tootallsportspodcast@gmail.com. Please like and subscribe wherever you can. If you're on YouTube, you can watch the videos and the interviews there. Please subscribe, hit the bell notification, drop a comment, share it with your friends. That'd be great. So that's where you can watch the videos. If you'd like to listen to them on the audio side, you can go to Apple Podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please scroll all the way down. If you could, find those 5 stars, hit the 5-star review, leave a review as well. It helps boost the show, and we obviously want more exposure for the show. And if you think we're 5-star worthy, go ahead and hit the 5-star. We're also on Spotify. We're on Pandora. We're on Amazon Music. We're on Google Podcasts. Wherever you get your podcasts, we're there. So just search Too Tall Sports Podcast. Once again, my interview is with Peter Fertig, the founder of the Act of Valor Award Foundation. Enjoy the episode, and I'll see you on the other side. Too tall, tall. Going crazy, going crazy. All right, welcome back to the Too Tall Sports Podcast. My next guest is the president and founder of the Bob Feller Act of Valor Award Foundation. He has been running the foundation since 2013. He's a native Long Islander in New York, and he's here to educate us today about the Act of Valor Award and talk about all the great things that they've done over the past 8 years, and everything that has to do with the Bob Feller Foundation. So he's Peter Fertig. Thanks for joining me, Peter. I appreciate you being on the show.
Brett, thanks for having me. Really do appreciate the opportunity to say hello.
Yeah, man. I have to say I'm happy that you, and shout out to Cameron, one of your coworkers or interns that personally reached out to me. I thought it was a great foundation. So I'm glad you guys found me. That's awesome.
We absolutely appreciate that. Yes. Thank you.
Definitely. No, anytime I can spread the word, and this is something great that you guys are doing. And I think I want to maybe bring it to the forefront and help you guys get some more exposure. So more than happy to do it.
Sure. Thank you. We appreciate that, Brett.
Sure. I kind of wanted to start a little bit with your background before we get to the award itself and the foundation. You're a true Long Islander, and you kind of have a funny story of how you grew up a Mets fan, right? And then maybe transitioned to the Yankees. So how did that all go down?
So, and you can appreciate this being a Long Island Duck. So in Long Island, we have, it's pretty long island. It's about 110 miles. And Queens was where our friends, the Mets, play, and the Yankees play over in the Bronx, which is not too far away. But I was growing up as a Met fan. And I think it was the early 90s when the Ducks started coming into a thought process that the Mets didn't want them there. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Why would you downgrade anything? Why do I have to travel 75 miles to get to you when I can go see the Ducks play at 40 miles and bring my children into the game of baseball? So they kind of killed the idea. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not following that. I'm going to do what, a lot of Long Islanders did, which was, you know what? I'm going to be a Yankee fan. And that's exactly what I did. And it was good because the Yankees took off in the 90s, and good for me. So, I wasn't too happy. And then by all stretch, the Ducks came into existence anyway, and the Mets were sold. So good riddance to them.
I hear you. I mean, other than the 86 World Series, I mean, that's pretty much, that was it for them. So you made the right choice, I would say.
Well, you had, look, I wasn't around in 69. I was born in 67, but they said that year was a magical year. I was around in 86. I saw that. That was a pretty wild year. So I give the Mets their props, but their ownership stunk from a baseball relations standpoint and trying an outreach to the youth. So, I'm a Yankee fan as at this point.
Sure. No, I totally get that. And, and me playing for the Ducks, it made total sense. We talked off air about this, that they should be a minor league affiliate of the Mets. They're right down the road. So I don't know why.
I don't know. I know they have a relationship with Staten Island. No, that's the Yankees. The Mets have one in Brooklyn. But I never understood why. And this was prior to Brooklyn and Staten Island having teams, why they wouldn't just grasp the Mets. It made no sense. Well, That's just the way their ownership's been.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Wish them well.
I was surprised to learn that once you became the founder and president of this foundation, you weren't a baseball player. I thought you had to be involved, but you don't. And you took it upon yourself to build this foundation. Where did it all begin for you to really think about starting this thing?
Well, I think we talked offline. I wrote a children's book where Bob Feller and Tom Seaver and Cal Ripken got involved. And I was pretty happy with the result. It was a good story. It was a story about good and evil, right and wrong, temptation and deception, all told through the old poem of Casey at the Bat. And I was pretty happy about it. And I got to do a couple of book signings with Bob Feller up in Cooperstown, and I got to know the man. And I'm like, I'm reading his introduction to the book, and I'm like, well, he was a phenom, right? He joined the major leagues when he was 17 years old as a pitcher off the farm of Iowa. Won 100 games prior to December 7th, 1941. But when December 7th came, he was about ready to sign his big contract, $100,000, turned his car around wherever he was going, went into Chicago and said, sign me up. Didn't hesitate, didn't waver, didn't question anything. Just, I want to serve my country. Now, I'd like to think that today we have players that would do that. I'm not sure. Right. We're very fortunate in having volunteers that go out and, serve our country admirably. We are very blessed from that. But at the time, Bob Feller did not hesitate. He wanted to fight.
That's pretty awesome, man. Very, very memorable from what he did. I want to get back to him in 1 second because I wanted to add one more thing about you. When I was, doing a little bit of research about you, you told me you worked for ADP, but for 20 years, that's a long time. So I wanted to ask you about what it's been like 2 decades with ADP and just the career you've built there. And I saw on your LinkedIn, you've been very successful. So I just wanted to ask you about your real work.
Well, I used to be thin like you. And over the years, the kids and work and everything else obviously put on, I got a face for radio. I hope you're showing it that way. But the truth of the matter is, I love working for ADP. I get to help small businesses, especially in a tougher environment with compliance. So that's what we talk about. If I can, I learned a long time ago from one of my mentors, if you help people get what they want, you get what you want. And that's how I position my work with them. And I have the freedom to work with the foundation based on the relationship I have at ADP.
That's pretty sweet.
So
man. That's awesome.
I hope that helps. Yeah. It's a living. I can't complain. But along the way, I was able to create the book. Along the way, I was able to create the foundation. It's been a lot of fun, and it's not easy by any stretch, but it's been a lot of fun.
Right. Now, when you wrote those books, how did you get in contact? Like I saw Tom Seaver had a foreword in one of them, and obviously Bob Feller. How did you even get in contact with those guys to get them to help you?
So, in fairness, I had a partner that helped me write the book. We worked it for about, believe it or not, it's a 15-minute read, but we must have worked on every single word for about a year and a half. and he used to be into the trade card business. I was never into that component of baseball. And he knew when he had a book signing, not a book signing, a trade show, a trading card show, that he could, reach out to Bob Feller or reach out to Tom Seaver. And then, so he sent them the galleys, which are, pre-books, and said, take a read of this. Tell me what you think. And they loved it, both of them. Once we had the support of those two, I actually reached out to Cal Ripken to say, hey, we have supported, these two gentlemen. They believed in the values of the book. Would you do me a favor, take a quick read? And when he said, yeah, and he loved it. So yeah, I'm sure I could get, it's a good story. It's a wholesome story. It's a story of good and evil and right and wrong and, winning and losing and how to overcome certain things in life and the importance that life is more than just a game of baseball. So I'm very happy with that. We actually are setting up, believe it or not, I'm going back to the book after 9 years with the foundation because we're having readings of the book so we can get it to youngsters for free. And the readings are actually being done by Major League Baseball players. So Craig Stammen was kind enough to do one. So we appreciate that. And we've got some other players that we'll be reaching out to as well to see if they want to read to the youngsters. As baseball wants to get younger into their sport, this will help them do that.
I think that's great, man. That's awesome. Everything you guys are doing are great. So, and I got plenty more to ask you about it.
We're trying.
Yeah.
Sure.
As far as starting, okay, you go from meeting Bob Feller, hearing his story, and then you actually are going to start a foundation. How do you go from that to now you're running everything? 2013, you're in your first year running it. How did it all get to that point?
It's a great question. I've kept my foot on a pedal so long that I haven't really, taken a step back to reflect. It's just been 9 years of go, go, go. And so when he first passed in 2010, I was very sad, but he lived a great life. He was truly an American hero, right? If you know his story, if you're not from the Cleveland area, I didn't know Bob Feller. My partner, Rudy, knew Bob Feller. So when I read his introduction to the book, I'm like, how does this not bounce off the page that a 23-year-old phenom who loved baseball stopped and went right into the Navy, right? They even made the suggestion when he was signing up, because he's from Iowa, that they would wait for him to be part of the USS Iowa. He's like, no, I want to fight now. And they put him on the Alabama, right? In which case he ended up with 6 campaign ribbons and 8 battle stars because he was in a lot of the fight in the North Atlantic and the Pacific. So I'm reading this and I'm saying to myself, how do we not know about him? So when he passed, I reached out to his wife, Ann, unfamiliar with her, as a letter. I'm like, would you mind if, and this is pure ignorance on my part, just a vision saying, hey, I'd like to honor the 3 components of his life, right? He was a Major League Baseball player, a Navy Chief Petty Officer, and a National Baseball Hall of Famer. I didn't have anything. I didn't have a foundation. I had no infrastructure. I didn't even have a way into the Navy. So I'm like, I'd like to pursue this if you're okay with it. And she loved the idea. So within 6 weeks, we had support of Major League Baseball, the Cleveland Indians, the National Baseball Hall of Fame. The USS Alabama actually was involved, and they loved it. And they're like, okay, but how do you make it an official Navy award? Right. No idea. So, you talk about social media and the outreach because you just don't know. I'm a big believer in faith. All right. All of a sudden, Admiral Michael Jabley, who's a big baseball fan down in D.C., mentored me through the process, told me this is what I needed to do. And for months, we were trying to figure out ways to try to maneuver to make it an official naval award. P.S. on Memorial Day 2013, mind you, we're still going through the process that we have supported the Navy, but we don't. So we're hopeful to get it, but we didn't have it. Usually, the military is very methodical, slow. They do things with due diligence. And they did, trust me. They had a lot of questions. Yeah. And they had a lot of things that they wanted to try to make sure we were doing an above board. They're like, sure, we'll jump on board. We made it official Navy award. So now it's a Major League Baseball and a National Baseball Hall of Fame, and it was the United States Navy Award at that point. So it's the first direct intersection between the United States military and Major League Baseball, which was pretty cool. But then we had an award we had to give out. I didn't have any busts, right? The award is a bust of Bob Feller. And then we had to decide if we're going to give the major leaguer a pitcher. Is it going to be a Navy chief petty officer? Going to be is a Navy chief, or we're going to have, but we had some decisions to make. What does it look like? So we took a picture from where he was, and then we sent it. I found it again. Good Lord blessed us. Found a sculptor in Kentucky. He created this beautiful bust of Bob Feller as a Navy chief petty officer. But that means we're going to give 3 awards, and they're going to be based on his military service. And the baseball players love that. The Chiefs obviously love that. And the Hall of Famers obviously love it. So we're 3 for 3. We went down the right path. But the military, the Navy, they wanted to, they're very historically accurate. A Navy chief petty officer in 2021 was different in 1941. You had to have the hat right. It had to have the right emblem in it. So they went into where the sculptor was and says, we want to look at this. And they made it and crafted it based on the 1941 look of what Bob Feller was as a Navy chief petty officer. Crazy stuff. And all this is going on. And we're like, okay, how do you keep moving forward? It's inch by inch. And, we ended up at the United States Navy Memorial, honoring our 3 components, which was Yogi Berra from the National Baseball Hall of Fame, Justin Verlander from Major League Baseball, because he gives back to his charity for military, and Senior Chief Petty Officer at the time was a Chief, Garth Sinclair. So it was a success, a rousing success.
Yeah, definitely.
Crazy year.
Oh yeah, I bet. I can't imagine. And I had a question I want to ask you about the specifics of the Navy. I don't know if you already answered it already, but about the Navy. But they have, sure. You were mentored by one of the officers that was telling you the right way to honor people and not the right way to honor people. So what was that like, figuring out, like going through that process of what you were allowed to do within their eyes?
So when you deal with admirals, actually with anybody in the military, it's a whole nother world, right? If a comma is out of place, they'll have no problem telling you that's wrong. And they don't sugarcoat it. That's wrong. It needs to be a semicolon, or it needs to be a period, or they butchered me. It was good, but they beat me up, and it's okay, but we move forward because of it. One of the things I learned is you don't want to have an ego with these people, right? They're helping me, right? Trying to get the organization to a structural point where we can actually move forward as an organization. Now think about it, right? We're putting a press release together. And when you put a press release together, it's there's lots of moving parts. But here I've got the Navy on one side. I've got Major League Baseball on the other. I've got the National Baseball Hall of Fame on a third level, and I'm trying to juggle figuring out, okay, what language do you want to use, and then craft one document. Crazy stuff. A lot of fun now. At the time, not so much.
Right. Totally understand that.
It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I bet. I wanted to ask you about one of the members of your foundation. So you already mentioned Yogi Berra. I want to talk to you about Ted Williams. Obviously, one of the greatest hitters, arguably, if not the greatest hitter of all time. And he had 2 different stints in his military, or I guess armed forces background, Hall of Fame baseball player. What can you tell me about what you learned about Ted Williams during that time?
Ted Williams was an American hero. His narrative was a little different than Bob Feller's, right? His narrative was, whereas Bob Feller, his dad's dying of brain cancer, he's the sole supporter of his family. He didn't hesitate. He didn't waver. Whereas Ted Williams, right, a little bit different. He, had a mom to support, and he took a lot of flack from the Boston and military, not the military community, but the Boston writers at the time, and the fans in Boston. They're tough. They used to send him yellow cards saying, hey, Why aren't you out, serving your country at the time? They were tough. And at some point, he made a decision to do that. But, he had to make sure his mom was set. And I kind of understand where he was coming from because, he's the sole supporter. But so was Bob Feller, right? Different narratives, but that's, I'd encourage you, go to there's a whole biography on Ted Williams that Netflix did, educated me as well. Highly encourage it. Really do.
And then as far as him as because there was, everyone or some people know about how good his eyesight was. How did they use his, I guess, world-renowned eyesight that obviously made him a great hitter, but how'd they use it when he was in his service time?
So you're right. So originally, like Bob Feller, after about 5 or 6 months, he joined the United States Navy and then became a Marine. But his eyesight was so good, right? They had him go down, I believe it was Pensacola, Florida. I could be wrong, but I believe it was Pensacola, to train Marines and aviation pilots on how to shoot. I think that, when you're talking about somebody like Ted Williams, comparing to, Joe Schmo, I don't know how you could do that. Even if that pilot is so good, Ted Williams' eyesight was, as we all know, is off the charts. So he would teach them certain things and learn from. There's a great book, if you don't have it, called Cloudbuster 9, that talked about his life and becoming a Marine when he was down in North Carolina, training to become a Marine. And it's a fascinating book. I'd encourage anybody that's a Ted Williams fan to read it. It's a firsthand knowledge from Ann Keene, who's the author. Brilliant job.
It's pretty crazy. I'm sure you thought this too. These guys are Hall of Fame baseball players, stopping their careers and going to serve for their country, it sounds great, but for the modern day athlete, like, you just don't see that happening anymore. So what are your thoughts on that as far as them coming back and being, even for Feller, as good as he was after he came back from the war?
So think about it. I try to think about it. It's mind numbing to me. Professional athletes are so good, right? So there were 500 Major League Baseball players that went off to war. 37 of them happen to be in the National Baseball Hall of Fame, including Jerry Coleman, who is our Marine recipient, who played for the Yankees, and is our Marine recipient. When you get a Marine award, that I could talk to about as well. But think about it from their perspective. They're playing a game that's so hard to play with beginning, and then step away from it for 3 or 4 years, fight, defend your country, and then come back to be at the same level that they were. I can't fathom that. I can't put that together. How does Bob Feller, you can throw any balls you want if you're on a ship in the middle of the Pacific, but how do you get to wherever you're going to come back to that and have the same demeanor, composure? How do you slip out of one role and then slip into another? I don't know how they did it. And it wasn't just Bob Feller. Ted Williams, Yogi Berra was at D-Day. Warren Spahn was at the Battle of the Bulge. And there were 5 Negro League baseball players, including Jackie Robinson, Larry Doby, Monty Irvin. They all stepped away from the game and then came back and were just as good, if not better, right? Crazy stuff. I couldn't fathom that. We had the honor of speaking to Randy Johnson. He was telling me when he got the award in 2019 for us. He said he also got the Warren Spahn Award, and he was saying, Warren Spahn went up to him and said, Randy, how you doing this year? Oh, very good, Mr. Spahn. We're having, he was intimidated also, right? This is Warren Spahn, the greatest left-handed pitcher of all time. I said, I had a great year. I pitched about 350 innings. I went, 27-4. And he says, that's what I did for, my whole career, Randy. What's the big deal? I don't understand. Because these guys just were a different breed. I don't know where you made them from, but God, they were just couldn't be nicer than any people you want. And the last living Hall of Famer from the World War II era was Red, and I probably get this wrong, Red Shandies. I believe that's how you say his last name, from the St. Louis Cardinals. And, I got to have a conversation with him and figure out, what he's doing and how we can honor him for, serving our country in the Army. He was actually in the Army. And, one of the things that, he would tell us is, it was a different time. It was just, 75 years, you think, hey, it's not a lot of, it's a whole nother world. Look where we've come from in 75 years.
Right.
So these players are a little bit different. We honor 37, right? So we've become, and I think what's unique about our foundation is we're an educational outreach, right? We talk about the 37 Hall of Famers. You go to our website, it's not just Bob Feller 24/7. It's Bob Feller. It's Larry Doby. It's Jackie Robinson. It's Joe DiMaggio. It's Hank Greenberg. It's Stan Musial. These guys all served at some level, and they all felt an important of our country. And I'm like, where is that today? I don't see it. I don't feel it. I'm not reflected by it. And
that's why we need you.
Well, it's not just me. We call ourselves Team 19 because we're all over the country. And if you want to be part of it, we'd love to have you. We're all volunteers. None of us make a nickel. We do this out of the goodness of our heart because we think there's a story here that's kind of been lost in time, right? It's like a message in a bottle.
Yeah.
They put it in a bottle and they go, oh, tell me about Ted Williams. Yeah, they talk about his baseball career. They don't talk about the 5 years that he served and what he did when he was over in Korea or his service in World War II. They don't talk about, Yogi Berra at D-Day. They just don't. They just pull out the stats. In America, like anything else, time heals all wounds, and they remember him for all baseball, right? They remember Yogi for his 10, World Series championships. That's great, but he was at D-Day as a 17-year-old kid. Could you imagine that? I can't fathom that. No. I've got a 17-year-old. He's 16. But imagine him going over, hey, Mom, I'm going to serve. Well, okay. And then he just goes. Right. I mean, that was the generation. Sorry, I get on my...
No, that's okay. And to see all that, nowadays you would think 4 or 5 years being away from the elite level of athlete, that's a long time to miss. So I couldn't imagine being able to come back at that level again after being gone for that long.
Think of what they've, it's not like they went away. They went away to fight. Right. Like
not like retired. Yeah.
No, they didn't retire and come back or kick up their feet. And they went to fight. Yeah. And they didn't know what the outcome was going to be. They didn't know if they were going to be in the United States or if they're flying across. I'll give you a great story about Bill Veeck. And, when we say 37 Hall of Famers, some of them were owners. Bill Veeck was an owner. He was the owner of, the Chicago White Sox at the time. Also the Cleveland Indians, but the Chicago White Sox. Here's an owner. He says, I want to fight, just like Bob Feller, and I want to be on the front lines. And he says, I don't want to, I'll go back and forth writing on trades. And he's doing this from Guadalcanal over on the Far East. He loses his left leg. I think it's his left leg. Still fighting. He's at Guadalcanal, and he comes back, and he's like nothing happened. I'm like, what owner do you know does that? I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. I'm going to give you a name I didn't know about. The gentleman's name was Nestor Chilak.
Okay.
You know who Nestor was?
No.
Nestor was an umpire. He was a Hall of Fame umpire. Nestor was at the Battle of the Bulge. He got shot in the face. He got the Silver Star. He got 2 Purple Hearts. He fought at the Battle of Bulge and then went back after 6 weeks because he didn't want to leave his unit behind. Came back and then umpired for the rest of his life. I mean, these are just incredible stories.
Yeah.
I could be here all day. I'm sorry.
No, I got another one to ask you about.
Sure.
So one of your honorees is Tommy Lasorda, and obviously, unfortunately, he passed away recently. But you got to have a connection with him, and he worked with your foundation, alongside of you guys honoring him. So what was it like to work with Tommy Lasorda?
Tommy Lasorda. was probably the nicest gentleman I've ever met in my entire life. He was genuine. He cared deeply about our country, like nobody I'd ever met before. Even I met Yogi Berra. I mean, Yogi would, he was getting up there, but Tommy was different. Tommy loved Yogi. That's where I got to meet him. I actually met him in, at Yogi's museum where we were honoring Yogi. It was actually D-Day. I got to meet him on D-Day where we brought sailors in to explain what was going on. So I'm meeting Tommy Lasorda, and he, obviously he was the quintessential Dodger, right? He talked and bled Dodger blue. Yeah. He loved the Los Angeles Dodgers. But you know what? He loved this country so much more than he did anything else. He talked about Bob Feller's service. He talked about Yogi's service. He talked about everything that had to do with baseball, but he also talked when he came to every event that we had, whether it was an educational event, letting people know exactly what's going on about the 37 Hall of Famers. He flew into D.C. to be part of our event when we were naming our Naval Award, our Marine Award after Jerry Coleman. He came to be with Mrs. Coleman. He was brilliant, and he was absolutely great. It's not every day you can pick up the phone and call a Hall of Famer and just talk to him about not just baseball, but tell me what it was like to be in the 40s as a Dodger, right? And he would talk to me about that stuff. He says, "Oh, the Dodgers made a mistake when they got rid of me for Sandy Koufax." He was very upset about that, actually. You laugh, right? But he believed it in his heart. He was the brilliant person, but he cared very deeply about our country. He loved Bob Feller, and he loved the guys that, he knew all of them intimately, and he cared deeply about his country, which he did. I apologize for the dog.
Oh, that's okay. No, hey, got to deal with that. We're all at home right now, so it's okay.
I know.
You mentioned Jerry Coleman, so I definitely want to ask you about him. You added an award named after him in 2015 as another award on top of the Bob Feller and all the other honorees. And just from the notes I got, but I'm sure you got plenty on Jerry that I want to ask you about, but just the fact that he served in the Marine Corps and flew over 55 combat missions, and he's the only MLB player to serve in 2 different wars. I mean, what can you tell us about Jerry Coleman?
So Jerry Coleman, I never had the honor to meet, but I heard great stories about him. Again, like Bob Feller, didn't hesitate, didn't waver. He was an 18-year-old kid. The Yankees were about ready to pick him up, and he said, "I'm going to wait. I want to serve my country." And he said, we have a video from the Padres that they've given us, and it's if you go to our website, there's, stories on Feller, stories on Coleman. But he said, Jerry Coleman, and I'll quote him, he said, "The greatest time of his life was being a Marine. Period. End of statement. It wasn't being with the Yankees and winning, I think it was 4 out of 6 World Series. It wasn't with the Padres for 25 or 30 years. It was his significant life was serving our country, not just during World War II, but also in Korea." Now, you bring up a good point, right? So although Ted Williams was in both World War II and Korea, it was Jerry Coleman that actually served in combat mission, ready to go, actually fought during World War II as well as in Korea, whereas Ted was about ready to fight, but we had dropped the atom bomb, and that was it. So, great Americans straight across the board, no doubt.
And Jerry was a Rookie of the Year in 1949 with the Yankees. He obviously, like you said, won World Series. He also was an All-Star. He was actually a legit baseball player too, not just a guy that was. I mean, he was really good.
He was very good, and they said both him and DiMaggio said if it wasn't for him and Rizzuto, right? Rizzuto also served in the Navy. He's one of our 37, but because they were so good up the middle, the pitchers can pitch a certain way and not have to worry about what was behind them. It was just, those two together were incredible. I think Billy Martin came when Jerry went back to Korea, if I'm not mistaken. I have to do some research on that. But Jerry Coleman and Phil Rizzuto at that time were incredible. At least according to DiMaggio. I got to take his word for it.
Right.
He'd know baseball better
I
than
would too. Yeah.
me. Yeah.
So the foundation's called the Bob Feller Act of Valor Award Foundation. So I wanted to ask you how you came up with the Act of Valor part of that award to name the award. I'm sure it's not easy to name. So how did you land on that?
So believe it or not, I actually saw the movie Act of Valor.
Okay.
And I'm like, you know what? If you think about valor, and it's a very important component. Bob Feller's life was an act of valor. So I'm like, you know what? I'd like to say, hey, let's honor him appropriately. And that's exactly why the name is who we are. So those that serve today understand that they're performing an act of valor, whether they're whether with the chief community, which we're a big part of in the Navy, or a Marine. They are serving acts of valor. So I'm thrilled that we're able to bestow that naming onto them.
I totally agree. I think it's a very powerful name, and you know exactly what you mean when you hear that. Like it's a very honorable thing to get. So I want to ask you about choosing who your honorees are every year. What's the process in figuring
Sure.
out? There's so many Hall of Famers, like you said, 37 of them. So how do you figure out who you're going to honor each year?
So we have we're very fortunate. Like I said, in the first year was crazy.
Right.
How do you get the bylaws together, create the foundation? It was just, I want to go back and write a book about that first year because it was a blur. But we've grown out of that. So we created the bylaws, and we found out that we stay in our lanes, right? So the Navy, we have liaisons within the Navy. They mentor us on saying, they put out what they call a nav admin, which goes out to the entire fleet. And they have what they call a MAR admin for the Marines. It goes out to the entire fleet. And they say, here's what we've done the last 8 years. Submit who you think would fall into this category for your nominee. And it goes back to our naval components, which is Captain Greg Zettler and Commander Wyrick. Used to be Admiral Michael Javeley, but and Captain Doug Adams. But now it's these gentlemen. So they're smart enough to, mentor us moving forward. So they control the naval portion. We don't get in the way there. The Hall of Famers get chosen by the board. The board does research. Actually, our intern team does the research. They say, we send our intern team out and say, find our Hall of Famers that either have served or care about our military, right? Go out and scour it, do your research, scrub, figure out who's giving back. And not everybody does, for whatever reason. Maybe they care about the American Cancer Society or Make-A-Wish. That's great, and God bless them. I think that's wonderful, and they should. But we want the people that care about our military, and there's plenty of them out there. And like Randy Johnson, or last year's nominee was, Brooks Robinson. So Brooks served actually in the Army, but they care deeply about our country. Like Tom Seaver, we've had Rod Carew, we've had George Brett. Now, George Brett and Randy Johnson, they didn't serve in the military, but they care deeply about those that do. And that's what we do. So we get together as a board and we say, okay, give us our top 5. And then we vote. We have a board, and the board votes specifically for the Hall of Famers. And when it comes to Major League Baseball, each team, after they get through their opening day, and this took years for us to decipher and figure out, right, what's the best process to do that. Right. So once they get through opening day, we send a message out to the teams. Hey, we want to honor your player on field with the Navy Chief Petty Officers in the United States Marines. Do you have somebody that fits that criteria? And we might get 15, 16 players, and they could be from whatever team, right? Last year was Craig Stammen, and he's been a nominee for multiple years, or Ian Kennedy or Sean Doolittle. They care deeply about what we're, the military and what we're doing. And but what's different about the Major League Baseball player is if you're a liaison, if you are a board member, if you are an intern, you get the right to vote. So if we have 50 or 60 people, whereas a board of 10 or 12 votes on a Hall of Famer, you have the right to vote because you're helping the foundation. You get to choose your favorite major leaguer, but you have to support it, right?
Sure.
It's not just, there it is, support why you do. So there's a learning curve there, and those that are involved, they kind of enjoy that. So that's how we do our process.
So I wanted to let everybody know. So there's 4 awards every year, right? There's the Hall of Famer, the Major League current or former, recent player, the Navy officer, and then the Jerry Coleman recipient. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So let me. You're
almost.
Yes, you're right there. So 2 things, right? And this took me years to figure out. There, in the Navy, the chief petty officer is the backbone, but he's an enlisted sailor. Same thing with the Marine. It's a non-commissioned officer. So they're not actually officers. They're enlisted personnel.
Okay.
So they work their way up the ranks. But to become a chief petty officer is one of the hardest things to do in the United States Navy. My father-in-law is a chief petty officer. Only 2%, from my understanding, become out of all the sailors become a chief petty officer. So it's very hard to obtain. Which is great, which really, if you think about it from Bob Feller's side, to become a chief petty officer and be, do what he did in such a short amount of time. He was only served for 44 months. Pretty incredible stuff. But he was a gun captain on the Alabama, and, we can get into that also. But we actually have 6 awards. So those 4 that you mentioned, and then the 2 others are what we call our peer-to-peer awards. Our peer-to-peer awards are sailors that make good decisions between the ages of 18 and 25 years old. And we honor them with a peer-to-peer award. And we've been doing that for about 6 or 7 years as well. So we have 6 awards that we hand out, and we have scholarships for military children, strictly a pass-through. We've raised $10,000 or $12,000. We actually had Mike Trout last year because we did our Walk for Valor, and our Walk for Valor program is an educational outreach that we do. But Mike cares about suicide. That's an important component in his life. So we talked about the military suicide because there's 22 a day that are happening every day that we need to fix as a country. Yeah. So we've taken on that project, and that's the money that we raised, give to students that care, either, that help out our country. They're either veterans or they're students that are part. So hope that kind of paints a picture.
Oh yeah, that's great.
And
go ahead.
I do say this because I think it's important, right? You look at the ESPYs, you look at the Oscars, you look at other awards that are out there. I say you'd be hard pressed, right? Even after 9 years of us doing this, because I never hear. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't hear it, but maybe it's out there. Maybe if there's others out there, please educate me. But I don't hear the Oscars or the ESPYs having an educational outreach, right? We're going out into the community and we're saying, hey, this is an important component. Yes, we're an award, right? But we're an educational outreach. We're an educational foundation. We think it's so important that people remember the service and the sacrifice of those that defend our country. That, and again, if they're out, if the Emmys are doing it and the Oscars are doing it, please yell back at me. I'm all for it, but I haven't heard anything yet. So please feel free to educate me.
I don't have the answer, so we'll see. I'm guessing you're right though, because
maybe somebody out there in Southern California has it.
Maybe we'll see. There's a lot. Of course, Hollywood's not too far away. So I wanted to ask you, in a non-COVID year, how does it? I'm sure stuff's going to be virtual, but how do the events work annually with the ceremonies and all that stuff? How does it all work in a non-COVID situation?
So we lost our ability last year to do our in-person ceremony. We also lost our ability to honor our baseball players on field with the Chiefs. You cannot get, and that might still hold true this year, we can't get anywhere near the baseball player or the field until they figure this out, right? So we might have the ability this year to go back to our in-service program. We've booked a date, November 18th. It's at the United States Navy Memorial in Washington, D.C., where we've hosted the other 7 of the 8 events. Last year, we were in Fort Meade, Maryland. We have a relationship with the Defense Media Activity. That's one of the benefits of being a nonprofit that cares about the military. They've been a wonderful partner that helps broadcast. They did everything for us last year, where we can then tell our story to those that serve. And I can, but we struggled last year, but we did the best we could. When we had Brooks Robinson, he did it virtually. With Craig Stamen, did it virtually. Our chief was Herman Kruppa, and our Marine was Herman Kruppa, and our chief was Lakeisha. Oh, shame on me. I'll find our chief recipient as well, but she did it from Norfolk, and she was brilliant. So. Was it hard? Yes. But we found a way to, tie the pieces together to make a program work.
Gotcha. No, that's great. And I'm sure, as we figure this whole COVID situation out, you guys will be able to get something going again.
Which we're trying. Yeah. I give the team a lot of credit. It's not just me. It's a team environment. And we do everything within our power to try to make our country better. That's our motto, right? Step by step. We got good people, whether it's military or civilian, that care deeply about what we're doing. To make us a little bit better and stronger.
Sure. Last few questions before we talk. I'll let you say all the links and stuff like that so everyone can look up your stuff and the foundation.
Sure.
When we were talking off air, I remember you talking about how I think it was Bob Feller who said, like, when people ask him about his greatest honor, it's not being a Major League Baseball player or being a Hall of Famer, it's serving his country. So what can you tell me about when you learned about that part of the valor part of this, when he really did serve his country, and that was the part that kind of sold you on his story?
I don't even know how to respond to that, to be perfectly honest. I really don't, because I've got a 24-year-old son. Now, mind you, he's not a professional athlete as good as Bob Feller was, but right. So here's a kid off the farm of Iowa. He's established. He's won 107 games. And he just stopped. I don't know how to explain that when I heard that. It just resonated with me. I'm like, how is this not in every single – I'm 53, right? So I'm saying to myself, how come I'm not taught about this in high school, right? It's our small foundation that's like a message in a bottle that, it's dependent upon us to tell the story. And we don't mind telling it. And that's why we welcome having you, Brett, to help us tell the story. It's just incredible to us that Hollywood hasn't picked up on this. How come Hollywood and they did it, by the way, I don't know if you saw Midway.
Not yet. I want to watch it.
Did you see Midway at all, Brett?
Not yet.
It's a brilliantly done job. And what they've done is they've actually put 2 or 3 different components together. So Sean Doolittle, right, plays for the Nationals. His great uncle was Jimmy Doolittle, who was the first attack on Tokyo, right? But the movie Midway actually showed the time frame and what was involved. They did a brilliant job. My question to Hollywood is, guys, we got 37 American heroes, each with a different story, and it's baseball. Great baseball players. Where are you guys, right? Speak to them for me, Brett. Help me out here. Get them thinking, because I don't understand it. It's a great story. We've just talked for about last 45 minutes. I'm sure they could figure out how to piece together. They did it with Jackie Robinson at 40, the movie 42. Again, a brilliant movie. It talks about that component, but they didn't say, hey, Jackie served our country also. None, he was in the Army. Where is that story? Where are they tying all this together? I don't know.
People love war movies too. So how
you would think,
and you get baseball, America's pastime,
tie it together.
Yeah, I'll do some work for you. I'll see what I can do.
Come on, Brett, bring us home. Bring us home.
I gotcha. Well, speaking of Hollywood and movies, I know you're a big historian of war and everything in sports. So if you could give my listeners maybe a couple books or other movies besides Midway and the Ted Williams special, what are some great ones that you think people should read or watch?
Well, Ken Burns baseball, believe it or not. I don't know if you know, when he talks about, I think it's um, inning 6, talked about 1940 to 1950. It will give you some insight into the time before World War II, right? And as we started entering into World War II. Very, very well done, by the way. There's lots of great movies out there that you can talk about. Look, I love, people talk of Field of Dreams, right, with Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
Love Kevin Costner in certain movies. Field of Dreams is great, but people don't know that Bob Feller's story was actually Field of Dreams. They must have grabbed it from that because his dad, who was an Iowa farmer, built an entire field for his son.
Right.
20 years before the movie, 30 years before the movie was made. Somebody must have grabbed it from there and said, "Hey, what a great idea!"
Right.
And there's the story. So, look, there are great. Great stories. Personally, we talk about our history today. I'd be remiss if I didn't say in our society, right, who's stepped away from the game is somebody like a Pat Tillman, right? If you're a football fan, right? Here's a young man who was killed, albeit friendly fire, right? But he died serving our country because of his belief in what happened on September 11th. And I know there's millions and millions of Americans that felt the same way that I did. Thank you, Pat, for your service to our country. I wish he hadn't died. But that, when you deal with war, and there's probably a lot of things that we don't know what's going on, it's got to be tough. There's a great movie my son just showed me the other day in dealing with Afghanistan called The Outpost. I don't know if you've seen that at all. Right? Dealing with Afghanistan and what we were, defending there. These guys have the same challenges that we had back in, World War II. More so, I think, then than today, because we wanted unconditional surrender. We were fighting 2 wars. Think about that. We're fighting Germany on one side, and we're fighting Japan on the other. Right? Not an easy task. And in between that are 37 Hall of Famers and 500 Major League Baseball players. Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. I wanted to give you an opportunity just to kind of plug all your stuff, websites, where we can find you, where people can donate or, help the foundation however they can. Thank you.
Again, we're all volunteers. None of us are doing this to sit on the dock of our bay, so to speak, right? It's a passion of ours to educate. Our dream is to obviously educate children, your children, grandchildren, future generations for what we're going to do. So if you go to activevaloraward.org, you can read about us. You want to donate, that'd be very generous of you. We would appreciate it. If you are a professional athlete, for argument's sake, and you want to read the book to young people, we're doing that now. I don't care what sport you happen to be in, come, reach out to Brett, and Brett will find me and pass my word along. And we'd love to have you. Again, that's part of our educational outreach. It's it's a good story to be told, that there's more to the game than just baseball. So
totally agree. That's awesome, man.
Thank you. Listen, you've been an absolute gem to work with, Brett. I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to get in front of your team and your fans and just tell the story of, some really true American heroes that made a difference so that we can have it. The funny part, if you want, and I'll leave it on this, is we know the outcome now, but we didn't know the outcome 75 years ago. Think about it from that perspective. They didn't know if the war was going to go 1 year, 5 years, 50 years, whatever, right? It went 4 years, but they didn't know that at the time. We have the ability to reflect back on it based on what we know. But at the time, I can only imagine what they were thinking. And yet they did an incredible job for our country. And it'd be a shame for us not to honor their service, whether it was incredible, whether like Yogi Berra or Warren Spahn or Nestor Chilak or Bob Feller, or you weren't like Phil Rizzuto said, he got seasick traveling from, California to Guam. It happens, right? I mean, but they still sacrificed for our country, and that's what it's all about.
Love it, man. Well, thank you, Peter. It's been great. Glad to have you on and share your story and everybody, so everybody can go donate and check out the website. And it's obviously for a great cause. So thank you for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Brett. Wish you nothing but the best, sir. Thank you again for having us. Means a lot.
Anytime.
Yes, sir.
What an incredible episode that was with Peter Fertig. If you guys make sure to go to check out that link, actofvaloraward.org, if you want to check out the foundation. It's an incredible cause, all volunteers, and they're just trying to share the story of guys that, it's just far in the past. And so we kind of want to bring that story to light. I was more than happy to have them on today. So loved having Peter on, and their ability to talk about important stuff with our country and the guys that served and then were able to come back and be Hall of Famers is pretty insane. So go check them out. Once again, it's actofvaloraward.org. And if you'd like to donate, that'd be awesome as well. So it's definitely for a great cause. As always, you can find me at Too Tall Sports Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Too Tall Sports. If you'd like to watch the interviews on YouTube, please do so. Type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. You can find us there. Please subscribe, hit the bell notification, drop a comment if you want, if you like the interviews, and please share with a friend as well if you think it's worth listening to. On the audio side, you can check us out on Apple Podcasts. If you can, please subscribe there. Also scroll down, if you could, all the way to the episodes page and find those 5 stars. Hit the 5-star for us. That'd be awesome. And leave a review if you could as well. That'd be great. We're also on Spotify. You can follow us there, listen to the episodes there. We're on Pandora. We're on Amazon Music. We're on Google Podcasts. Wherever you get them, we're there. So please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you can. Once again, just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. Thank you for listening as always, and we'll see you next week with another great episode. Have a good one.